Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the BattleCry. I'm excited to be with you. I'm Mark Meckler, the host of the BattleCry here on Sunday evenings, and I love being with you guys. Sometimes I can't. I'm out traveling to get other kind of special stuff that producer G tries to work in, but I like being home on Sunday nights, and I like being with you guys. And the reason I do is I love the feedback I get from you, and everything I do, the reason that I do what I do, the reason that I travel, the reason that I'm engaged in politics, the reason that I fight for a convention of states is because of you. And it sounds weird to you. You're watching, you're like, me? You don't even know me, but I kind of do know you. Some of you I actually know personally, but I know all of you in a general sense, and that I've been traveling now for 15 years, literally all over the country. I've been in 48 states, 2 more to go, North Dakota and Alaska. I'm going to check Alaska off here at the end of August. But I've been all over the country. So if I haven't met you directly, I've met people like you, people who live near you, people who believe the way you believe. And the thing that's most important to me about everything I do in politics, in activism, is elevating you, is doing the best I possibly can to speak for you. And what I mean by that is not that you can't speak for yourself, but I get the opportunity to speak in the media, to do it here on a Facebook Live, to maybe be on Tucker's show right before he got canceled, hopefully the new one when that really gets ripping. But to be out there and to do radio interviews and print interviews, and what I'm always thinking of when I do those things is, what would you say if you had a chance to do what I'm doing? And I would say the highest praise that I ever get isn't people saying, oh, you did such a great job, you're so fantastic, whatever that stuff. I don't listen to that stuff if people say it. It's when people say, you're saying exactly what I'm thinking. Because remember, so much of what I get, if I say anything that's smart, if there's any wisdom, the majority of it honestly comes from you guys. It's from listening to you all the time. So part of the battle cry is me talking, but part of it is your comments, your questions, your feedback. I am constantly listening to you. So we always have a theme for the week, a call to action. And this week's call to action is go see Sound of Freedom. If you haven't done that yet, you need to do it. You need to do it this weekend. It is an incredible movie. If you're wondering what's the buzz all about, the buzz is all about the fact that this is a great movie. And that's first and foremost to me. One thing I think the conservatives have done wrong in the way they make movies and write books and stuff is they think about the idea they want to spread first before the idea of making a great movie or making great music or whatever it is. And I think it's really important if we're going to have, I apologize, this is Winston sticking his face in. Winston is a 14, almost 15-month-old Great Dane at this point, and he loves to come on camera. He's just a ham. Really what he wants is my attention because I'm giving you my attention. So if he pokes in from time to time, you got to forgive me. That's just what big, dumb Great Danes do. 14 months, 15 months? How old are you, buddy? 120 pounds, just a little puppy. All right, buddy, go ahead. So the reason you need to see Sound of Freedom is it's just great. It's awesome. If you watch it, and it's hard to watch because it's about a difficult subject, sex trafficking in kids. But if you watch it, you're going to come away feeling like you saw a great piece of art. They created a great movie. The acting, Jim Caviezel and the other actors are phenomenal. The kids who act in it are phenomenal. The cinematography is great. The story is compelling and interesting and exciting. And you're just going to love it as a movie. You're going to feel like you came away seeing a great piece of filmmaking. But you're also going to see something that matters. Not every movie matters. You can watch a great movie. It's just interesting and compelling and beautiful, and you just enjoy it. In this case, it matters. This is an incredibly important subject. And we just polled this, by the way, over 3/4 of Americans believe that this is really important, that the federal government, our governments are not doing enough to combat human trafficking, sex trafficking, child trafficking, slavery is really what it is. They're not doing enough to combat slavery in the United States of America. It's over 90% of Republicans. It's 70% of, 80% of independents, 70% of Democrats say that we're not doing enough to stop human trafficking. It should be 100%. I think the people who aren't saying that we need to do more, people who just don't know what's going on. If you watch this movie, I promise you're going to know what's going on. I got to watch a pre-screen of it before it came out in the theaters, and I watched it with my wife, Patty, and she didn't want to watch it because it's hard, because it's a difficult movie. And even when the movie started, pretty quickly, she felt compelled to get up and leave. And she never did. Probably 3-4 times in the movie, she's like, I don't know if I could watch this. And I said, you can leave whenever you want. I'm not forcing you to watch it. I need to watch it. I want to watch it. And she stayed. And she stayed because it's important and because it's incredibly well made. It's important because we need to stop this. If we as a country, if we as human beings can't take care of the most vulnerable among us, our children, if we can't engage our hearts in doing something about that, then it says a lot about who we are as people. And in the United States of America, this is the largest market in the world for sex trafficking. Think about that. For people sold into slavery, human beings, including small children, to be used as sex objects for pedophiles. That's a business model. If we can't, as human beings, find it within ourselves to do something about that, each of us individually, then what does it say about who we are individually? And what does it say about who we are as a country? So I think this is an important movie because it's bringing this to light. It's also doing incredibly well in the theaters. You know, they expected this thing to make $4, $5, $6 million. I think it's projected to do over $40 million right now. It might already be at the $40 million spot. Go see it. Go see Sound of Freedom. Bring some friends with you. Support good art. It's not conservative, by the way. It's not intended to be a political movie. It's intended to bring this problem to light. Some people are opposing this movie, and it blows my mind. And I would say, if you come out in opposition to this movie, if you see somebody saying, "Oh, you shouldn't see that movie because it's conservative or because it's Christian," or whatever you say, then you're probably a pedophile. So I would ask the person, really, are you in support of pedophilia? Are you in support of child sex trafficking? Because you must be if somehow you're opposed to this movie. There are people on the left coming out in opposition to it, saying it's QAnon adjacent or something like that. I don't really know anything about QAnon. I don't think Winston does either. He just wants to play. Anyway, go see it. I promise you, I'm not going to say you're enjoying it in the sense that it's an enjoyable experience because it's difficult, but I think it's an important movie for you to see, and I'm going to encourage you all to go see it. Let me know what you think of it next week. Number two, we're going to talk today about presidential politics, and we're probably going to do this every week from here on out until November of 2024 because it's going to be a weekly phenomenon. And what happens each week is somebody's hot, somebody's not. We're going to talk about who's hot and who's not, and then we're going to give a weekly incident report. There's going to be some kind of incident in the presidential elections every single week from here through November 2024. We're going to report those. Who's hot, who's not, and what's the incident reports. Who's hot right now? Donald Trump. Donald Trump is in motion. It looks like he's on the move. I'm not going to say he's inevitable because things happen and we're still a ways off from the real primaries taking place, the first caucuses, Iowa, New Hampshire. But man, he's on the move and he's increased his lead. DeSantis seems to have stalled out a little bit, at least in the polls. He's not making the news. The exciting stuff is happening right now in the Trump numbers. That's really where it's playing out. So right now I would say, and this is not about who I support or don't support, so don't give me grief for it. It's right now Trump's hot, DeSantis is not. All the other candidates are sort of also rans in the race. I'm not sure why some of them are even running. A lot of them are saying things that are good and smart, but I just don't think they have a chance. I think right now it's DeSantis versus Trump. Now, I could be proven wrong. It's happened in previous elections. The front runners fall. But right now it looks like it's Trump's to lose. So that's who's hot, who's not. Then the question is, what's the incident this week? And the incident this week took place in Iowa. Governor Kim Reynolds, who I think has been a fantastic, perhaps one of the best governors in the United States of America right now, handled COVID really well, handling everything well in her state right now, is about to sign a 6-week abortion ban, got that done in her state. So I think she's been a superstar as a conservative. Donald Trump is on the attack against her, which seems crazy to me. As a front runner, no need for him to do this, but apparently Governor Reynolds, her position is she's not going to endorse anybody, and she's willing to appear with any presidential candidate that comes in her state if she's asked. That seems like a good approach to me in a hot primary. And so Trump apparently got very angry with her about that, tried to say he's the reason she won her race. That may be true for DeSantis's first race. It's not true of Governor Reynolds. Governor Reynolds was a rock star. She was going to be reelected. She didn't need Trump's support to get elected. She was appointed the first time and then elected the second time. I think she won by a 19-point margin or something like that. She's done a great job there in Iowa. I've been there a bunch. People love her. So why Trump is picking a fight with a conservative rock star doesn't make sense to me. But that's the weekly incident. And then all the other candidates, or a whole bunch of them, and a bunch of Republican politicians came out in support of Governor Reynolds. We even had some switch endorsements away from Donald Trump because of his attack on their governor there in Iowa. So some Iowa legislators switched their endorsements to Ron DeSantis because they won't support the presidential candidate attacking their governor. So that's the who's hot, who's not in the incident report on the weekly presidential. Let's switch now to something we're going to probably do weekly because it's just every week, which is the culture wars and all the abominations. So what's the current culture abomination? Apparently, Walt Disney is now remaking Snow White. Let your mind run with that. They're going to do it in live action instead of animated. So what do you think they're going to do? You know what they're going to do. I don't even have to tell you what they're going to do. Snow White is not going to be white. That's right. Look, I don't really care. I just think it's interesting because part of Snow White is she's very white, right? Like that's part of her character. And it's not white as in race. She has very white skin. That's part of Snow White. That's why she's called Snow White. In this movie, she's going to be played by a Hispanic woman. Okay, I guess. I think that's okay, I guess. I think the most interesting thing is what they've done to the seven dwarves, because they will no longer be the seven dwarves. They will be a dwarf and six other characters of important diversity, I guess is the word. Ethnicity, men, women, gender, height. I don't know. I haven't seen this, but I'm assuming there's going to be somebody who is allegedly a man pretending to be a woman, or a woman pretending to be. It's absurd. They're dressed in the pictures I've seen in what look like thrown away outfits from a Renaissance fair somewhere. I mean, it looks like an absolute disaster. They're going to spend a couple $100 million making this movie. They're going to set that money on fire. It's going to be a big old bonfire, right? The movie's going to make no money. Maybe they don't even finish the production. It looks so bad and so horrifying and so destructive to what is an intellectual property classic, probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They're going to burn it to the ground. Part of this came because a famous actor who also happens to be a dwarf said it was really horrible that it's seven dwarves. And so it looks like Disney might have reacted to that. I'm not sure that's the case, but if that's the case, good job, Mr. Actor Dwarf, because you just cost six of your compatriots who probably don't get that many jobs in Hollywood because there aren't that many jobs for dwarves. You just cost six of them probably very high paying jobs with Disney. Like, these people eat their own in a way that's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. Now, closely related to our culture corner abomination is the gender ideology madness. And that madness continues to destroy women's sports. And I don't understand why more women aren't standing up and saying this is an outrage. Riley Gaines is a swimmer from University of Kentucky. She's standing up and sort of leading the charge and going out and speaking in public, getting assaulted for it, saying it's absurd and offensive that women are losing out to men in women's sports. But here's one that goes to a whole new level. There's something called the World Paralympics. The Paralympics are for handicapped folks, people with disabilities. In this case, the story is about somebody with a visual impairment who is a runner. And this is a dude. Make no mistake, it's a guy. You can look at this, check this picture out. That's a guy with long hair and maybe some mascara, who apparently took third place in the women's para athletics championships in Spain. Because that's fair. How? Because that's good for women's sports. How? As a father of a daughter who played soccer, how would that be good for my daughter or your daughter or anybody's daughter? I'm going to be perfectly blunt and frank. I don't give a damn about this guy and his desire to compete against women. You want to go compete in sports? Compete against men. You're a dude. Get over it. Your sick fantasy and your sick desire to beat up women in sports, it's outrageous. And here's the best way to say it. And I got to give credit where this is due. This came from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and she said this in the response to President Biden's State of the Union. She said, "We live in a world where we're now engaged in a fight between crazy and normal. That dude is crazy. That dude's crazy. Women who want to compete against other women in athletics, real, actual women, genetic women, biological women, they're normal. This dude is crazy. And the people who let him compete against those women, they're not just crazy, they're evil. And they're stealing opportunity from women in women's sports. And this has got to stop. And my hat's off to Riley Gaines and anybody else like her, women who are willing to stand up. If you're a woman, stand up, please. Stand up against this stuff publicly, against this madness. Support Riley Gaines and others who are going to come out against this kind of stuff. We have to be able to be willing to speak truth into the world. Sometimes you're going to get attacked for it, and sometimes your positions when you speak the truth are not going to be popular. And here's one that might not be popular. It's on the war in Ukraine. Look, I've been open about my mixed feelings on the war in Ukraine. When you can spend money and weapons and treasure to defeat a geopolitical foe without putting any of your troops in harm's way, I generally think that's a pretty good deal. And I generally like that. So Ukraine got attacked by an aggressor, which is Russia. We know who the aggressor was. But to be fair, part of that was set up by Joe Biden. He showed so much weakness. He actually came out and said what we would do would depend on whether it was just a limited intrusion or a more aggressive intrusion. Like, that's insane to say something like that. Part of this was set up by the posture of the U.S., by what we did in Afghanistan, our embarrassing, humiliating, devastating, evil withdrawal from Afghanistan. You know that Putin looked at that and said, Joe Biden is weak. And so part of it, that the fact there's even a war in Ukraine, is the fault of the United States, and specifically the fault of this administration. You'll note it didn't happen under Donald Trump. And this is not because I'm some accolade of Donald Trump. It's not because I love everything Donald Trump did, but he was strong on the world stage, and nobody invaded anybody during Trump's term as president. Joe Biden comes in, he blows it in Afghanistan, he shows weakness everywhere in the world. The Middle East is completely unstable. Russia invades Ukraine. So we support Ukraine. I was initially in support of that. I always want to know, what's the end game? We're supporting Ukraine to what end? Now, Joe Biden says over and over, we support Ukraine as long as it takes anything it takes. And that even apparently now includes cluster bombs, cluster munitions, which are known not only for being horrible, dangerous munitions. All munitions are horrible and dangerous. They are purpose-built. But these leave all kinds of unexploded munitions around the countries in which they're used. They've done this historically all over the world. Over 100 countries have banned them. Jen Psaki, speaking on behalf of President Biden previously, earlier in the administration, said that these were too dangerous and it would be a war crime to use them, apparently, unless we give them to somebody to use them. Apparently, unless it's one of our allies here, Ukraine uses them. So we've now sent cluster munitions to Ukraine. I don't understand that. I don't understand what the end game is. As long as it takes is not a strategy. It's not an end game. We've now thrown into the mix the idea that we won't consider Ukraine for membership in NATO until the war is over. Now, I don't even know if we should consider Ukraine for membership in NATO. It's kind of a dangerous proposition. I think part of talking about that is part of what motivated Putin to move on Ukraine. Again, I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm just saying, what the heck is the strategy? This doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what are we doing there? Because if you say we're not going to let Ukraine into NATO unless that war is over, then what advantage does Putin see to ending the war at all? Because he doesn't want Ukraine in NATO. So if he says, I don't want Ukraine in NATO, what's he going to do? He's just going to keep fighting for as long as he possibly can. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. How much money are we going to spend? And now, here's the part that really worries me. Biden is just signed an order allowing 3,000 reservists to be moved to Europe. We are increasing our troop presence in Europe. Are we going to war with Russia? Are we actually going to get into a fighting war, a hot war, our troops on the ground kind of war with Russia? I said from the beginning, I was not in favor of that. I don't think our interests there are strong enough. I don't think it's worth doing. I don't think there's anything for us to win. And I care first about the United States of America. Ukraine's not anywhere near the top of my list. A lot of important things we have to worry about in the world. Ukraine is among them, but it's not top among them, and not even close. So I want to know from President Biden, from Anthony Blinken. What are y'all doing? What's the plan? How are you going to get us out of there? How are you going to end the war? Or is it just an endless war intended to benefit, I don't know who, the military industrial complex? Come on, guys, get it together. Okay, so that's Ukraine. That's a little bit depressing. So let's talk about something exciting. I want to show you some images, some footage from something I did early on this week. I guess it was Monday, Tuesday. I was in Nashville, and what I was doing is I was filming some pilot episodes for a new television show. So check this out. Now, this is so fun and cool and exciting. Maybe you saw some pictures there of the set. That set was purpose built for this new show that we're working on. It's going to be a show, my show, where I'll host. And the intent is to elevate you. Yeah, the grassroots. That's my point. Is again, I started with this. This is what I do. I believe that you guys are the key to saving America. I believe that what you guys do out in the field, not just COS, but activists and grassroots volunteers across many organizations and individuals stepping up and doing things, people running for office, you're the key to saving the country. And normally when you watch the news, what you see is dark, dismal, your vote doesn't count, we're never going to win, the kids are lost, the schools are lost, the colleges are lost, the corporations are lost. And if you're a rational person, when you're done, you finish thinking, I don't know what I can do. There's nothing I can do. I should just give up, buy guns and ammo and hide in the countryside, go into a cave, but definitely give up. And I don't believe that's correct. I've traveled all across this country, as I've said many times before. I've met you. I have hope. I have belief. I know there are God-fearing, America-loving patriots out there who aren't down with the woke ideology, who are going to run for office, who are going to volunteer for organizations, who are going to be in the fight. So there's no reason to quit. There's no reason to give up, and there's no reason to lose hope. So on the new show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell those stories. We're going to bring in people who know those stories, people who are maybe famous and well-known, who know these stories, who collect these stories when they're out in the field as well. And then we're going to go out in the field and we're going to meet these people and tell their stories. So I'm super excited about it. I'll give you more details as they become available. This is just a pilot right now. Will be available online, but it'll also probably be available on a network somewhere. So look for that coming soon. The images are great. The set is great. Everything's perfect. Filmed the beginning of 3 episodes. It all went beautifully. So who knows? Pray for us. Hopefully you'll see it soon. What's up with COS before we close out? We're still pending in North Carolina. I feel like I've been saying that week after week after week. They've got a budget impasse going on. It's kind of stalling everything out. So we passed the House. We're looking to pass the Senate there with the Convention of States resolution. I think that looks pretty good. Got an upcoming legal fight in Kansas. I think we already passed Kansas. We don't put it in the actual win column because there's going to have to be some litigation. They tried to put some restrictions on it that I believe are unconstitutional. So does their former attorney general. And we'll see what the current attorney general says. But those could be number 20 and 21. So that's what's up with COS right now. Lots of exciting stuff. This is the season really where we build our grassroots because the legislation in most states is not pending. So we focus on just the muscles, right? Building the muscle of grassroots activism, getting ready, going to our state strategy sessions, planning our state strategies for 2024. Lots of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in Ohio right now specifically. They have a special election going on to raise the threshold for changing or amending their constitution. It's going to hopefully, after this, what do they call it? Measure A passes, then that would require a 60% threshold. Can you imagine being able to change your constitution with a 51% vote? That doesn't make any sense. The U.S. Constitution takes 3/4, a 75% vote. Ohio, they're just trying to raise that to 60% so they don't get a bunch of crazy stuff in their constitution. That election's coming up next month, so I know our activists are heavily involved in that. Always appreciate that you guys are involved in the important things. All right, I'm going to go to Q&A, always my favorite part. We will start with Karen McGinnis. She said, "Who are you? I just found this today." I love that question. Who am I? Just a guy, Karen. I am a guy originally from California. Got involved when in the early days of the Tea Party movement, co-founded the largest Tea Party organization in the nation, Tea Party Patriots. 2012, I decided, a lot of that's been co-opted by Washington, D.C. I don't want to do that anymore. founded Citizens for Self-Governance. The idea was to restore the idea of self-governance to the American body politic. In other words, it's up to you. It's not just me. It's not up to the politicians in Washington, D.C. It's up to each of us in our own lives, in our own cities, in our own counties, in our own states. And ultimately, it's up to us to save the nation. So that was Citizens for Self-Governance. Did a couple of things along the way, raised $1 million, gave it away to grassroots groups, sued the IRS, and won a class action settlement for their abuse of the Tea Parties. And then we founded Convention of States. And the idea of Convention of States is use the Constitution to save the Constitution. It takes 34 states or 2/3 of states to call a Convention of States. We're calling it specifically for the purpose of debating and proposing amendments that would put term limits on Congress and the deep state, the bureaucrats and the staffers and those who run these agencies. I call that the Fauci Amendment. Number two, to impose fiscal restraints on DC. DC is fiscally, financially out of control. Impose a balanced budget amendment, spending caps, tax caps, make them apply generally accepted accounting principles. Anything we can do to put a fiscal noose around Washington, D.C. And then the third thing is anything we can do to limit the scope and the power of Washington, D.C. In other words, tell them, no, you can't have a Department of Education or a Department of Energy or an EPA. All of those things were intended to be done by the states, and many more. The Convention of States can do that. So that's who I am. I'm just a regular person like you. I just happen to stumble my way into this stuff, and I've dedicated my life to taking power away from Washington, D.C., taking power away from the government and giving it back to the people. Alex Gallimore asks, how many commissioners do you think will be at the simulated convention in Colonial Williamsburg that will attend from all 50 states? Alex, I think we're looking at probably in the range of 130 to 135 commissioners will attend from all 50 states. If you don't know it, August 2nd through the 4th in Colonial Williamsburg, we're going to hold a simulated convention of states. We did this back in 2016. It was super successful. We wanted to do it again to introduce a bunch of legislators who hadn't been before to this process. A lot of those folks will be legislators from states. Some will be former legislators. And I think probably 10 or 15% of the delegations will be made up of commissioners who are just citizens, some lawyers, some professors. So look for that. August 2nd through the 4th, we'll be live streaming a whole bunch of that. Nora C. asks, any updates on Pennsylvania or Michigan? Look, Pennsylvania and Michigan, as you guys know, got very difficult in the last election. They're messy. They had a bunch of bad election law stuff came down. I think unconstitutional stuff. I think there was a lot of fraud in those states. And the legislatures just got turned upside down. So we're sort of reworking our strategies there because of the new situation in the legislatures in both of those states. Dina in Florida said, I bought my whiskey glasses and I agree with your views on Trump and DeSantis. I'd be happy with either of those guys as president. Frankly, there's a bunch of candidates I really like. Vivek Ramaswamy, I find to be a super interesting guy. So what I want is I want a good conservative candidate who can articulate conservative principles. And that's who I want in the White House ultimately. And as far as the whiskey glasses, guys, we have these cool signature whiskey glasses that I designed. It's a whiskey glass with a leather wrap around it, like a leather holder. And it says, tastes like freedom on one side. It's got my signature on the other side. We only had 100 of those made. I'm glad you got yours, Dina. I don't know if there are any left. There's no more extras for me. But if they're still there, I would recommend you order them because there were only 100 of those made. Ellen Ferrara says, we need an entirely new government. They're all crooked. Our government was never meant to be like this. It's so depressing and makes one not want to vote. Look, I agree with you, Eileen. There's so much crookedness. There's so much bad stuff going on. Don't let them depress you. Don't let them take your hope away. Don't let them keep you from voting. We have to vote. We have to be in the fight. We have to remember that the fight belongs to us. It's up to us. And they want to discourage you. They want you depressed. They want you to give up. They want you to lack hope so that you won't do the things that it takes to save the country. So if you ever feel like that, remember this: duty is ours and the results belong to God. That's a famous saying from John Quincy Adams, 4th president of the United States. He was asked why he kept doing what he was doing. He was trying to abolish slavery. He ran for Congress after he was president. He was in Congress for 17 years. He didn't abolish slavery. But he was asked, why do you do what you're doing? You're not going to make this happen. And he said, duty is ours. Results belong to God. So get out there and do your duty, Eileen. Brian D75 from Rumble says, we have to move as many states as possible into the Convention of States Article 5 arena. This is the proper way to correct federal overreach. Use the Constitution, amend the behavior of the feds, put the genie back in the bottle, move to a true, free, and proud America with term limits, financial responsibilities, and he says it again, and term limits for starters. So I agree with all of that. Obviously, Brian D75 on Rumble. Thanks for watching us on Rumble. We appreciate it. Make sure that you subscribe to Convention of States everywhere you can find us. That's Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all the censorious places, as well as the non-censorious places. Go over to Rumble. I recommend Rumble because they're not going to censor us. I recommend Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Mark Meckler, and just like us, follow us, spread it around, be in the fight. And this week, remember, if you haven't seen it yet, this week, go out and see Sound of Freedom because it's going to touch your heart. It's a great film, and you're going to be convinced that you need to do something to make a difference. That's all for this week on the Battle Cry. God bless you guys. I love you, and I appreciate you. We will see you next week on the Battle Cry.